Claire's hands had carried the scars of labor for 5 years. At 32, her face still held a serene beauty that contrasted with the constant alertness in her eyes, like someone always expecting bad news. Every day, she woke at 4:30 a.m., brewed a quick cup of coffee, and packed 2 lunchboxes before waking the girls. "Time to get up," she whispered, stroking the messy hair of her nieces. The girls, 7 and 9 years old, rubbed their sleepy eyes as Claire helped them dress. "Are you going to be home late again, Auntie?" asked little Emma as Claire braided her hair. "Just until 6, sweetheart. Mrs. Helen will check on you. Be good, okay?" After dropping them off at the public school, Claire crossed half the city, switching between 3 different buses. The new job in the upscale neighborhood of Polanco meant better pay, but also more time away from the girls. There was no other option. Rent for the room they lived in had just gone up, and Lily's shoes were already torn in the front. At exactly 8 a.m., Claire rang the bell of a building that looked as though it was made entirely of glass. Daniel Rivers checked the same numbers on his computer for the 3rd time. At 42, he had built Glassdeck from the ground up, transforming it into one of the most respected tech companies in Mexico. His penthouse took up the entire top floor of the building, with floor-to-ceiling windows that made the city look like it belonged to him. "Mr. Rivers, the new housekeeper is here," his assistant announced over the intercom. Daniel sighed. She was the 4th one in 3 months. The previous ones had either been inefficient or far too nosy. He hoped the agency had finally understood his 2 main requirements: efficiency and discretion. He adjusted his tie before going out to meet her, not to impress, but out of habit. Daniel's life was a series of meticulous routines that gave him control over every aspect of his existence. A control he had craved since his mother vanished one day without explanation when he was just a child. Claire stood waiting by the door. The apartment was so large it felt like a museum: minimalist furniture, white walls, technology everywhere. "Good morning, I'm Daniel Rivers," said a deep voice. Claire looked at the tall man in the impeccable suit walking toward her with measured steps. "Nice to meet you, sir. I'm Claire Herrera," she replied, lowering her eyes slightly. Daniel noticed immediately that this woman was different. Her posture was upright, but not submissive. Her appearance was simple, yet neat. And in her eyes, there was something deeper than mere necessity. "Anna from the agency told me the basic rules," Claire continued. "But I'd like you to tell me your specific preferences." Daniel nodded, pleased by her professionalism. He gave her a tour of the apartment while explaining his expectations. Breakfast at 7, quiet cleaning, separate laundry methods for different garments, dinner ready by 8 p.m., no visitors, no personal phone calls during work hours, and of course, absolute discretion about what she might see here. "I have constant virtual meetings and sensitive documents," he added. "I understand completely, sir," Claire replied in a neutral tone. During the first few days, Daniel hardly noticed her presence. Claire worked like an efficient shadow. When he left his office, the floors sparkled. When he looked for a shirt, it was perfectly pressed. When he got hungry, dinner appeared right on time, always delicious. The only thing that struck him as unusual was her urgency to leave exactly at 6 p.m. Most domestic workers in upscale homes stayed late to earn extra money. But Claire politely declined his offer for overtime pay. "I'm sorry, sir. I have commitments," was her only explanation. On the 3rd day, Daniel found himself watching her clean the windows. There was something enigmatic in her focus, in the way she seemed to lock away her thoughts. When she noticed his gaze and turned around, he pretended to be checking his phone. That night, alone in his perfectly organized penthouse, Daniel realized that for the first time in years, he was genuinely curious about another person. Who was Claire Herrera really? What was she hiding behind those eyes that seemed to have seen too much? Where did she rush off to every evening with such determination? The answer would come sooner than he expected, and it would change everything he thought he knew about himself. On her 4th day of work, everything proceeded as usual. Daniel watched her discreetly while pretending to work on his laptop. There was something about her that stirred an uneasiness inside him. Not just curiosity, but a strange sense of familiarity with someone completely unknown. At 5:55 p.m., Claire put away her cleaning supplies and quickly changed into her street clothes. "See you tomorrow, Mr. Rivers," she said in her usual neutral tone as she picked up her worn handbag. Daniel nodded from his chair, but once the door closed, he set his computer aside. Without overthinking, he grabbed his car keys and took the emergency stairs to avoid bumping into her in the elevator. "What the hell am I doing?" he muttered as he got into his black Mercedes. He didn't have a clear answer, only an impulse he couldn't resist. From a safe distance, he followed Claire to the metro station. She stood in the crowded train, holding the overhead rail, her gaze fixed on nothing. Daniel had never used public transportation, yet here he was, clumsily blending into the crowd, trying not to lose sight of her. After 3 transfers and nearly an hour of travel, Claire exited at a station in Itapalapa. Daniel followed on foot, keeping a distance. The contrast with Polanco was stark: narrow streets, cramped houses, tangled electric wires overhead. Claire walked quickly through ever-narrowing alleyways until she reached a vacant lot where several families had built makeshift homes from tin, wood, and tarps. A squatter's settlement, Daniel thought, his stomach tightening. "Auntie Claire!" shouted 2 little voices. 2 small girls ran toward her, and Claire knelt down to hug them, smiling in a way Daniel had never seen before. "My princesses! How are you today?" Claire kissed their foreheads and pulled 2 small tangerines from her bag. "Look what I brought you." Daniel stood frozen behind a post. The transformation was complete. Claire's tense body had relaxed, her voice now soft and full of warmth, so unlike her professional tone. "Mrs. Helen said Emma didn't want to eat her vegetables," tattled the older girl, about 9 years old. "They looked gross," protested the younger, hiding her face in Claire's shoulder. Daniel watched them enter a tiny structure made of wood and tin, its door nothing more than a curtain. Peeking through an improvised window covered with plastic, Daniel could see the inside. A tiny space with a mattress on the floor, a small table, and several stacked boxes serving as a closet. Claire lit a small burner and began preparing something that smelled like soup. The girls took out their notebooks and showed her their drawings as she cooked. "Will you help me with my homework, Auntie?" asked the older one. "Of course, Lily. First we eat, then we go over everything," Claire replied while carefully dividing a single chicken breast into 3 unequal portions. Daniel noticed she served herself the smallest piece. An elderly woman peeked out from the neighboring shelter. "How was your day, my dear? Is the new boss treating you well?" Claire gave a faint smile. "Yes, Mrs. Helen. He's strict but respectful, and pays better than the others." "It was about time you caught a break after all you've been through," the old woman sighed before heading back inside. Daniel stood frozen, feeling as though he were intruding on something deeply personal, something he had no right to witness. He saw Claire helping the girls with their homework, then tucking them into the only mattress, pulling a thin mat from the corner for herself. Before sleeping, the 3 knelt down and prayed together. Daniel managed to catch snippets. "Take care of Mom in heaven. Help us get a real house one day. Thank you for Aunt Claire's job." Something cracked inside him. He remembered his 300 square meters penthouse, its 3 empty bedrooms, the designer kitchen where he barely made coffee. He headed home with a strange weight in his chest. The metro had stopped running, so he had to take a cab. During the ride, the images played over and over in his mind. Claire dividing food, kissing the girls, sleeping on the hard floor so they could have the mattress. Back in his luxurious apartment, Daniel poured himself a glass of whiskey, but didn't drink it. He stared out at the city lights through his flawless windows. "Emma and Lily," he whispered, repeating the girls' names. For the first time in many years, Daniel Rivers felt ashamed of his wealth, and simultaneously, an overwhelming desire to do something that didn't serve only his bank account. The next morning, Daniel awoke restless after a night of broken sleep. Images of Claire and the girls had mixed with memories of his own childhood. His father always absent, his mother disappearing without a word, their large house slowly turning into a cold and lifeless shell. When Claire arrived on time, as always, Daniel greeted her with a warmer than usual, "Good morning." She looked at him briefly, surprised by the shift in tone, but responded with her usual formality before heading to the kitchen. "I've prepared fruit and yogurt for breakfast," she announced minutes later, placing the plate on the table. "Thank you," Daniel said. Then, as if offhandedly, he added, "There's a lot of fruit in the fridge. Feel free to take some if you want. It always goes bad." Claire tensed slightly. "That won't be necessary, sir. I insist." "It's a waste to throw it away," he replied, avoiding her gaze. In the days that followed, Daniel began leaving little things. A bag of apples on the kitchen table, leftover cookies from the meeting, a pack of colored pencils he no longer used. Claire rejected the first attempts, but eventually began accepting a few, probably thinking of the girls. Daniel also started asking casual questions during meals, breaking his usual silence. "Have you always worked in private homes?" he asked one day, feigning nonchalance. "Since I was 16, she replied. "Before that, I worked in factories, but the schedule didn't allow." She stopped abruptly as if she had said too much. "Didn't allow what?" he asked gently. Claire hesitated. "To care for my nieces. I'm responsible for 2 girls." Daniel nodded, pretending this was new information. "That must be hard." "We do what we have to do," she said with a brief smile that momentarily lit up her face. That Friday, Daniel made up an excuse to leave work early. He drove to a store near Itapalapa and bought 2 dolls, leaving them in the back seat of his car. On Sunday afternoon, he, coincidentally, passed by the squatters' settlement and saw the girls playing outside with a deflated ball. His heart pounding, he stepped out of the car. "Excuse me, are you Claire's nieces?" The girls looked at him with suspicion. The older one, Lily, stepped protectively in front of Emma. "I work with your aunt," Daniel said. "She forgot something at home, and I thought I'd return it." He held up a bag with the dolls. Emma peeked curiously. "What is it, Emma?" Lily scolded. "We don't talk to strangers." At that moment, Claire stepped out of the shelter and froze upon seeing Daniel. Her face showed a mix of shock and fear. "Mr. Rivers? What are you doing here?" Daniel's cheeks flushed. "I was passing by and remembered you'd forgotten this." He awkwardly extended the bag. Claire took it cautiously and looked inside. Her eyes widened when she saw the dolls. "They're for your nieces," he murmured. "I thought they might like them." A battle of emotions played across Claire's face. Finally, she sighed and asked, "Would you like to come in for a moment?" Daniel ducked slightly as he stepped inside the small shelter. The space was even more cramped than it appeared from outside, but it was spotlessly clean and well organized. There were wildflowers in a recycled tuna can and children's drawings decorating the wooden walls. "Girls, this is my boss, Mr. Rivers," Claire said in a cautious voice. Emma, the younger one, walked up without hesitation. "Did you bring the dolls?" Daniel nodded, moved by the innocence in her eyes. "I hope you like them." "They're beautiful," she exclaimed, grabbing one. Lily, still guarded, observed from a distance before finally approaching and quietly whispering, "Thank you." Mrs. Helen appeared at the doorway. "Fancy visitors," she said. "He's my boss," Claire explained, clearly uncomfortable. Daniel greeted the older woman respectfully. She studied him from head to toe as if measuring him. "Would you like some coffee, sir?" Claire offered politely. "I'd love some," he replied, knowing it was the only way to stay a little longer. While Claire brewed coffee on a small burner, Emma showed Daniel her drawings. The girl had a natural talent. He listened, fascinated as she explained her castles and princesses. "One day I'll live in a castle," Emma said with the absolute certainty only a child can have. "I'm sure you will," Daniel smiled. When he finally left, he noticed Claire's expression had changed. There was still caution, but now mixed with curiosity. "Thank you for the dolls," she said quietly as she walked him out. "It was nothing," he replied, and then added. Looking into her eyes, Daniel said softly, "You have a beautiful family, Claire." For the first time since he'd met her, she gave him a genuine smile. Back in his empty apartment, Daniel felt something strange in his chest. It wasn't pity or charity that had driven him there. It was something deeper and more unsettling. The realization that despite their vastly different worlds, he and Claire shared the same loneliness. The following week, something shifted between them. Their conversations, once limited to task lists, began to stretch. Daniel started finding reasons to work from home, often leaving his office door open. "Do you mind if I play some music while I clean?" Claire asked one morning. "Not at all. I'd like to hear what you listen to," he replied, genuinely curious. Soon, the soft melodies of Juan Gabriel filled the apartment. Daniel smiled, hearing her hum quietly while folding clothes. One Tuesday, Daniel arrived home early with a box of pastries. "I thought we could share a snack," he said casually. "If you don't mind." Claire hesitated for a moment, then nodded. They sat on the terrace, the city stretching endlessly beneath them. "The girls love the dolls," she said, breaking the silence. "Emma sleeps with hers every night." Daniel smiled. "I'm glad to hear that. They're lovely girls." Claire looked at him steadily, as if weighing a decision. "Why did you come looking for us that day?" The direct question caught him off guard. Daniel considered lying, but something in her eyes asked for honesty. "I followed you," he finally admitted. "I was curious to know where you went every evening in such a hurry." He expected her to be angry, but instead, Claire slowly nodded. "I figured. Why do you care?" Daniel looked down at his coffee. "I'm not entirely sure. Because I saw something in you." "Something familiar?" she asked skeptically. "Loneliness," he said quietly. "I recognize loneliness when I see it." The silence that followed was intense, but not uncomfortable. Finally, Claire sighed. "I'm not alone. I have my girls." "But they're not your daughters, are they?" Claire shook her head, her eyes glistening. "They're my sister Rachel's daughters. Her voice broke slightly. She died 3 years ago. An accident." Daniel felt a lump in his throat. "I'm so sorry." "She was hit by a drunk driver. He didn't even stop to help. The police never found the person responsible." Her words fell like stones in the silence. "Rachel was everything to me. She was strong. Smart. I was always just the little sister who followed her everywhere." Claire smiled sadly. "When she got pregnant with Emma, the father disappeared. Same thing with Lily. But she never complained. Always said her girls were her greatest blessing." Daniel sat still, listening. The night of the accident, Rachel was coming home from work. She crossed Tlahuac Avenue when a car hit her. Witnesses said the driver was speeding with the headlights off. He didn't brake, not even for a second. A tear rolled down Claire's cheek. "Since that day, I swore I'd raise her daughters as if they were mine. They're all I have left of her." Daniel reached out a hesitant hand across the table but didn't touch her. "You're an extraordinary woman, Claire." She wiped her tear with dignity. "I'm not extraordinary. I'm just doing what anyone would do for their family." She paused, then added, "And I've learned one thing. I don't trust promises from any man. I've seen too many of them broken." The words hit Daniel like a slap. "Not all of us are the same," he murmured. "Maybe," she replied. "But life has taught me to be cautious." Daniel nodded, respecting her honesty. After a moment he spoke again. "My mother abandoned me when I was 8. Claire looked at him, surprised by the confession. "One normal day, she dropped me off at school with a kiss on the forehead. When I came home, she was gone. No note. No explanation." Daniel had never shared this with anyone before. "My father drowned himself in work and alcohol. I basically raised myself." "I'm sorry," Claire said gently. "I built my company from nothing," he continued. "I thought success would fill the void." Daniel smiled without joy. "I have everything money can buy. And still, the loneliness doesn't go away." Claire nodded. "You can't cure loneliness with things." "Exactly," he said softly. Their eyes met, no walls, no masks. Two wounded souls seeing each other clearly. Daniel's phone rang, breaking the moment. It was James Morgan, his former head of security. "Daniel, I've got the report you requested on the 2022 corporate vehicles. Can I send it now?" "Sure. Email is fine," Daniel replied, vaguely remembering the request tied to an internal audit. "Just a heads up," James said. "There are some irregularities. One vehicle in particular, the one tied to that incident we handled quietly, remember?" Daniel frowned. "Not really. Send it and I'll take a look. He hung up and noticed Claire watching him curiously. Work, he said with a forced smile. That night, after Claire left, Daniel opened James' email. What he read made his world stop. A detailed report on a black Mercedes involved in a fatal hit-and-run on Tlahuac Avenue 3 years ago. The driver, Eric Vaughn, then Glassdecker's vice president of operations. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He spent the entire night reading and rereading the report. Each page revealed a more painful truth. The black Mercedes had belonged to Glassdecker's executive fleet. Eric Vaughn, after a business dinner, drove drunk. He struck a woman and fled the scene. The worst part wasn't just the accident. It was what followed. James Morgan, then head of security, had covered it up, destroyed evidence, bribed an officer, and sent the car to a back alley shop for fast repairs. All to protect the company's image. Rachel Herrera, 34 years old. Daniel read the name aloud, chills running down his spine. The photo in the file showed a smiling woman. A face similar to Claire's, but more defined. At 7 a.m., Daniel called Eric Vaughn, who had left Glassdeck the year before due to strategic differences. Daniel? It's early. What's going on? Came a sleepy voice. I need to see you. Now. 2 hours later, Eric walked into Daniel's office with the arrogant confidence he'd always carried. What's the emergency? He asked, waving off the coffee. Daniel slid the report across the desk. This. Edward's expression changed as he looked at the documents. That's old news. Old news? Daniel's voice trembled with rage. You killed a woman and fled like a coward. Edward shrugged. It was an unfortunate accident. These things happen. These things happen? Daniel repeated in disbelief. Look, I was drunk. I shouldn't have driven. But Thomas handled everything perfectly. No one linked the accident to the company. Case closed. Daniel felt nauseous. Do you know who that woman was? She was the sister of my housekeeper. You left 2 little girls without a mother. For the first time, Edward looked uncomfortable. I couldn't have known. And frankly, I don't see why you care so much about a maid and her family. Daniel clenched his fists. I'm reporting you. Today. Edward smirked. And expose Glassdeck? Reveal that the company covered up a vehicular manslaughter? Think carefully, Daniel. Your shares would crash. I don't care. You should. You signed off on the repair documents. Thomas briefed you, maybe not in detail, but legally, you're complicit. Daniel froze. It was true. He vaguely remembered authorizing emergency repairs for the fleet, trusting his team without asking questions. Let it go, Edward said, regaining his arrogance. She's already dead. Nothing will bring her back. Without thinking, Daniel lunged across the table, grabbing Edward by the collar. You're a monster. Edward shoved him off effortlessly. And you're a hypocrite. You care now because you know the family. But for 3 years, you enjoyed your millions while those girls lived in poverty. The words hit Daniel like a whip. Edward was right. He had been part of the system that allowed this injustice. Edward straightened his suit. If you report me, I'll make sure you go down with me. Think about it. Without another word, he walked out. Daniel remained frozen, trapped in a nightmare. How would he ever look Claire in the eyes again? How could he tell her his company had hidden the truth behind her sister's death? The following days were torture. Claire kept showing up for work, noticing his strange behavior but respecting his silence. One afternoon, as she prepared dinner, she finally asked, "Are you all right, sir? You seem troubled." Daniel looked at her, tormented by the secret. "Claire, there's something I need to tell you." She waited, but the words didn't come. "Sometimes people make terrible mistakes," he finally said. "Mistakes that can't be fixed with an apology." Claire frowned. "What are you talking about?" "I'm trying to help someone who did something unforgivable, something that hurt many people." "And why would you help someone like that?" she asked with distrust. Daniel sighed. "Because I believe everyone deserves the chance to face the consequences. To seek forgiveness, even if they don't deserve it." Claire studied him with her piercing gaze. "Are you trying to help me, or are you trying to pay for something you're too afraid to admit?" The question knocked the breath out of him. It was like she could see through his soul. "I just want to do what's right," he whispered. "What's right is always the truth," she replied simply. "My sister used to say that even a lie with good intentions ends up hurting more." Her words were daggers. Daniel nodded, unable to hold her gaze. That night, after Claire left, he made a decision. He called his lawyer and asked him to file a formal report against Edward Vance for manslaughter and against Thomas Blake for covering it up. He also instructed his accountant to create an educational trust fund for Emma and Lily. He couldn't bring back Rachel, but he could bring justice, even if it meant losing Claire forever. What he didn't know was that fate would act faster than he expected. 3 days later, while Daniel was away in a meeting, Claire was cleaning his office. She accidentally knocked over a folder and its contents spilled onto the floor. As she picked up the papers, her eyes froze on a photograph. It was Rachel. With trembling hands, Claire began reading the report. Every word was a knife. When she finished, she remained motionless, her face soaked in silent tears. Suddenly, everything made sense. The attention, the gifts, his interest in the girls. It wasn't kindness, it was guilt. When Daniel returned home that night, he immediately sensed something was wrong. A heavy, almost suffocating silence filled the apartment. Dinner wasn't ready. The kitchen lights were still on. "Claire?" he called, dropping his briefcase on the couch. He found her sitting on the terrace, eyes fixed on the city lights. The report was open on the table, Rachel's photo staring up at the sky. Daniel froze. He didn't need to ask. "I was going to report him," he murmured. "I swear, tomorrow morning." Claire didn't respond at first. When she did, her voice was eerily calm. 3 years, she said. 3 years searching for answers. 3 years imagining the face of the man who killed my sister. And now I find out. I've been cleaning his house. "I wasn't the driver," Daniel said, taking a step closer. "But you covered for him," she replied, finally looking at him. There was no hatred in her eyes, only endless pain. "Your company protected the man who took my sister, while I buried her with a loan." Daniel sank into a chair across from her. "Believe me, I didn't know. I found out a week ago, when I got that report." He ran a hand through his hair in frustration. "I've been living in hell ever since, trying to find the courage to tell you." "Why should I believe you?" "Because I filed the report," he said, pulling out his phone. He showed her the emails with his lawyer. "Edward Vance will be arrested tomorrow. So will Thomas Blake, the man who covered it up." Claire read the messages, stunned. "I also set up a trust for your nieces," Daniel continued. "It won't bring back their mother, but it'll guarantee them education and a safe place to live." "Why?" The question was barely a whisper. "Because what we did was unforgivable. Because those girls deserve a future. Because you deserve justice." He breathed deeply. "And because, even if you have no reason to believe it, I care. About you. About the girls. More than I can explain." Claire closed her eyes. A single tear slid down her cheek. "I should hate you," she whispered. "I'd understand," he said. "But I can't," she added, opening her eyes, confused by her own emotions. "I've seen the way you look at the girls. No one can fake that kind of love." Daniel extended his hand on the table, still not daring to touch hers. "I don't want to lose you, Claire. But I'll understand if you can't forgive me." She looked at his outstretched hand, unsure. "I need time," she said softly. "I need to process all of this." "Of course." Claire stood slowly. "I won't come to work for a few days." Daniel nodded in silence. With every step she took toward the door, Daniel felt as if she were walking away from him forever. "The girls will ask about you," Claire said, pausing at the doorway. "Tell them I had to leave on a trip. That I'll be back soon," he replied, clinging to that tiny thread of hope. After Claire left, Daniel stayed out on the terrace all night, watching the city that never sleeps, feeling more alone than ever. In the following days, a media storm broke out. News of Eric Vaughn, former vice president of Glassdeck, being arrested for involuntary manslaughter made national headlines. Daniel faced the press, publicly admitting that his company had failed ethically by covering up the accident. Glassdeca's stock plummeted. Several clients canceled contracts. The board of directors called an emergency meeting and demanded Daniel's resignation. He accepted without resistance. It was part of the price of truth. Meanwhile, Claire faced her own emotional storm. At night, after the girls had gone to sleep, she would take out a photo of Rachel and sit quietly with it. "What should I do, sister?" she whispered, searching for answers in that smile frozen in time. She remembered the moments shared with Daniel, the terrace talks, the way he treated the girls with such gentleness, the vulnerability in his eyes when he spoke of his absent mother. "He didn't kill you," she reasoned. "And now, he's doing what's right." One afternoon, Lily found her staring out the window. "When is Leo coming back from his trip?" the girl asked. "He promised to teach me how to play chess." Claire smiled sadly. It was the first time Lily had shown interest in an adult since her mother's death. "I don't know, sweetheart. I miss him," Lily confessed. "I like how he tells stories. And he always listens when I talk, like my ideas matter." That night, while preparing dinner with the few ingredients she had left, Claire made a decision. She couldn't live rooted in resentment. Rachel wouldn't have wanted that, for her or for the girls. Justice was in motion. The guilty would face the consequences. And Daniel, despite his failures, had shown real remorse. "Forgiveness isn't weakness," Rachel used to say. "It's the bravest thing a person can do." A week after discovering the truth, Claire returned to Daniel's building. The doorman recognized her immediately. "Mr. Rivers hasn't left in days," he said, concerned. "He only orders delivery now." Claire's heart pounded as she went up. She didn't know what she would say, only that she needed to see him. Daniel opened the door looking worn down, his beard unshaven, deep circles under his eyes, his clothes wrinkled. His expression lit up at the sight of her. "Claire, can we talk?" she asked gently. Daniel nodded and stepped aside. The once immaculate apartment now looked abandoned. They sat in the living room, silence hanging between them. "I saw the news," Claire began. "What you did, facing it all publicly." "It was the least I could do," Daniel replied. "It cost you your company." Daniel shrugged. "They were just business deals. I can build another company. But if I'd kept hiding the truth, I could never regain my dignity." Claire studied his face, seeing sincerity, regret, and something else she wasn't ready to name yet. "I don't want to live in fear," she said finally. "Not of pain. Not of love. You didn't kill my sister. You just didn't know how to tell me." Daniel looked at her in disbelief, tears gathering in his eyes. "I don't deserve your forgiveness," he whispered. Claire moved closer and sat beside him on the couch. "Forgiveness isn't something you earn, Daniel. It's a gift we give, to others and to ourselves. But my company, my negligence." "You made mistakes," she interrupted. "You trusted the wrong people. But when you learned the truth, you acted knowing you'd lose everything. That says a lot about who you really are." Daniel lifted his gaze to meet hers. "How can you be so strong?" "I'm not," she smiled sadly. "I just learned that holding on to anger is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. My sister used to say that." A comfortable silence settled between them. Through the window, the sunset painted the sky in shades of red and gold. "What happens now?" Daniel finally asked. "I don't know," Claire answered honestly. "I only know. I want to build something good out of all this pain. For the girls. For Rachel. And maybe for us." The question left his lips in a whisper. "For us." Claire looked at him for a long moment before answering. "I think we also deserve a second chance. If you want one." Daniel slowly extended his hand across the space between them, just like he had on the terrace. This time, Claire took it in hers. "I want it more than anything," he said. At that moment, the intercom buzzed, interrupting the moment. Daniel glanced at his phone, confused. "It's the doorman," he explained. "He says, there are 2 little girls downstairs insisting on coming up." Claire's eyes widened. "The girls? I left them with Mrs. Helen while I came to talk to you. How did she let them?" "I authorized it," Daniel said, surprised. Without knowing. I'm sorry. Moments later, Emma and Lily burst through the door, beaming, mischievous, and full of excitement. Leo! Emma cried, running straight into his arms. We found you! Lily added, more reserved but just as happy. Mrs. Helen said Auntie Claire was coming to see you, so we followed her on the bus. Girls! Claire gasped, horrified. You can't wander the city alone. What were you thinking? We wanted to see Leo, Emma said with perfect child logic. You were really sad when he left. Claire blushed while Daniel tried to hide a smile. And, Lily added with a serious tone, Leo promised to teach me chess. And a Rivers never breaks a promise. You said so. Daniel looked at Claire with a raised eyebrow. You said that? I may have mentioned it, she admitted, flustered. Emma, oblivious to the adult tension, looked around in awe. This place is huge. Like a real castle. She turned to Daniel suddenly, her face serious. Leo, can I ask you something important? Of course, little one. Emma looked to her sister for support, then asked the question that had been on her mind for days. Can we call you Dad now? Silence. Claire froze, unsure what to say. Daniel stared at the girls, then at Claire, equally stunned. That's, Claire began. I would love that, Daniel interrupted, his voice trembling with emotion. But only if your aunt says it's okay, and if you both give me time to earn that honor. The answer satisfied the girls, who smiled brightly. I'm hungry, Emma suddenly declared, changing the topic like only a child can. Can we eat something? Daniel stood with renewed energy. Let's make the best dinner ever. How about homemade pizza? The girls screamed with excitement, running toward the kitchen. And in that small, imperfect moment, something new began. Something built not on perfection, but on truth, healing, and love. As Daniel headed to the kitchen, Claire gently held him by the arm. Are you sure about this? She asked quietly. It's not just me. There are 3 people in this package. Daniel took her hands and kissed them softly. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. You are the family I always dreamed of having. Claire smiled, her heart lighter than it had felt in years. Let's take it one step at a time, okay? As much time as you need, Daniel replied. We've got a whole life ahead of us. In the kitchen, between laughter and flowers scattered everywhere, something began to take shape that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. A family. One united by forgiveness, truth, and the hope of a better future. That night, Daniel realized that life had given him a second chance. Not just to make things right, but to finally understand the true meaning of love. Not the kind measured by wealth, but the kind built through small, shared moments of joy. And Claire, as she watched the girls laugh beside Daniel, knew that Rachel would be proud of her decision. Forgiveness wouldn't bring her sister back, but it opened the door to the happiness she and the girls so deeply deserved. Sometimes life breaks us, so we can learn to rebuild ourselves stronger. And sometimes, out of the deepest pain, come the most unexpected joys. The Sunday sun poured golden light into the small apartment in Kwokon, making the scattered toys in the living room glow. It had been 8 months since that night of homemade pizza, and life had taken a turn none of them had seen coming. Daniel was packing the basket for their weekly picnic, while the sound of a sweet recorder echoed from the hallway. Emma was practicing the flute she had received for her birthday. The melody was far from perfect, but Daniel smiled at every off-key note. Are you sure it sounds okay? The girl asked hesitantly. It's the most beautiful sound in the world, he replied sincerely. And he meant it. Anything the girls did filled him with pride and awe. Lily entered the kitchen with a math book in her hands. At 10 years old, she had a natural gift for numbers. One Daniel encouraged wholeheartedly. Can you help me with these equations after the picnic? She asked, showing him a set of problems. Of course, he said, kissing her forehead. But remember, it's Sunday. No more than 30 minutes of studying. The bedroom door opened. Claire stepped out in jeans and a simple blouse, but to Daniel, she looked like the most beautiful woman in the world. Are you all ready? She asked, tying her hair into a ponytail. We just need to pack the cookies we made yesterday. Emma shouted, dashing to the kitchen. Claire walked over to Daniel and kissed him softly. "Good morning," she whispered. "Good morning," he replied, wrapping his arms around her. "Did you sleep well? You came in pretty late." "The final exam took longer than expected," she said. "But I think it went well." 6 months ago, Claire had started evening classes in business administration. They were demanding, but she was determined to build her own path. "I'm sure you did great," Daniel said. "You're the smartest and most determined person I know." She smiled, grateful for his constant support. Their relationship had grown slowly, built on honesty and mutual respect. They decided to move in together 3 months after their reconciliation, but not into his penthouse. Daniel had sold the luxurious high-rise and most of his shares in Glassdeck. With the money, he bought a cozy apartment in colorful, bohemian Kuchen. A fresh start for all of them. He also invested in a small tech consulting firm, allowing him to work from home most of the time. "What are you thinking about?" Claire asked, noticing his thoughtful expression. "How lucky I am," he said simply. "A year ago, I was surrounded by luxury and completely alone. Now I have toys on the floor, constant noise, and I've never been happier." Claire hugged him, understanding deeply. Her life had also transformed. From poverty and fear, she now had stability and hope. The girls were attending a good school, had access to healthcare, and for the first time in years, she could think about a future beyond mere survival. "Ready to go?" Daniel asked the girls, who nodded excitedly. The Viveros Park was full of families enjoying the sunshine. They found a perfect spot under a large tree and laid out their picnic blanket. While the girls ran around chasing butterflies, Claire pulled a folded letter from her jacket pocket. "It arrived yesterday," she said, handing it to Daniel. It was a court notice. The sentence against Eric Vaughn had been confirmed. 6 years in prison for involuntary manslaughter and abandonment. James Morgan had received 3 years for the cover-up. "How do you feel?" Daniel asked gently. Claire looked up at the sky, as if searching for Rachel among the clouds. "At peace," she said at last. "It's not that I've forgotten what happened, but it doesn't consume me anymore." Daniel took her hand. "Rachel would be proud of you." "I know," Claire smiled. She'd be happy to see the girls like this, growing up healthy and loved. Just then, Emma came running over with a wildflower in her hand. "Look what I found, Mom." The mom had started slipping out naturally a few months ago. The first time Emma said it, Claire cried all night, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming weight and honor of that word. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Claire said, taking the small purple flower. Daniel watched the moment with a heart that felt too full. They weren't living a fairy tale. There were disagreements, hard moments, and painful memories that still surfaced uninvited. Claire still had nightmares about the accident. Daniel still struggled with the guilt of not acting sooner. But together, they had learned that true love isn't about perfection. It's about compassion. It's not the absence of problems, but the commitment to face them together. Lily joined them, sitting beside Daniel. "When are we going to visit Mom Rachel's grave?" she asked quietly. It was a monthly tradition, bringing flowers to the cemetery and telling Rachel about their lives. As if she could hear them. "Next Saturday," Claire replied. "Do you want to bring her something special?" Lily nodded. "I want to show her my math certificate. And tell her that Dad taught me how to play chess, just like he promised." Daniel felt his heart swell. That Dad, still a miracle to hear every time. As they ate fruit and sandwiches under the spring sun, Daniel looked around at his family. Not the one he once imagined, but the one life, in all its painful, unexpected ways, had gifted him. Life wasn't perfect, but it was real, and that, he realized, was worth more than all the fortunes in the world.
Did Daniel and Claire's story touch your heart? A tale of love, redemption, and second chances that proves even the broken can heal beautifully. Tell us your thoughts below. Like if it moved you. Share with someone who needs hope. Subscribe for more soul-stirring stories. Where are you watching from? We love seeing how far emotions can travel.